we will be trying to introduce and tell what adaptive optics is all about, see what kind of images we get, try and compare it with the current standard that we have, that is STOCT. So I would be covering comparison of STOCT and adaptive optics for imaging. RNFL imaging using STOCT would be covered by Dr. Sushmita. In vivo imaging of the lamina cribrosa and optic nerve architecture, Dr. Rajesh. And imaging of RNFL with adaptive optics, comparison between normal and glaucomatous eyes by Dr. Dhanraj. We all know that RNFL evaluation is critical for the early detection and management of glaucoma. Visualization of the nerve fiber layer defects, however, happens only when the thickness of the nerve fiber layer reaches 50% of the normal values. Current status with OCT, we know that it has given a totally new dimension to retinal imaging. We obtain cross-sectional images of the retinal tissue to submicron axial resolution. Works on the principle of low occurrence interferometry. Initially it was time domain and later on Fourier domain OCT, which further improved axial resolution. We do have a fairly high diagnostic accuracy both with time domain and spectral domain OCT. Now what we get with spectral domain OCT is an image like this, where we have accurate and repeatable measurements of the circumpapillary retinal nerve fiber layer thickness. With the STOCT as compared to time domain, we have higher speed, we have higher axial resolution. STOCT also gives more repeatable and reproducible measurements than Stratus OCT, and STOCT is probably better at detecting changes in the RNFL thickness and progression sooner than Stratus OCT because of its reduced measurement variability. We are aware of the various imaging modalities for retinal nerve fiber layer, fundus photography, the SLP, OCT and the SLO. However, none of these have the necessary lateral resolution to actually get cross-sectional images of individual retinal nerve fiber bundles. They all assess the thickness, but it would be worthwhile to see what the width of these retinal nerve fiber bundles would be. We would also like to differentiate the retinal nerve fiber bundles from the radial fibers of Muller cells, which separate these bundles. So what do we need? We need to image retinal ganglion cells in vivo, distinguish the functional versus the non-functional cells, and this would then allow us to diagnose, monitor and manage glaucoma in a better way. The retinal nerve fiber layer we know is made of the nerve fiber bundles as well as the Muller cell septa. Nerve fiber bundle is like a square rod and has 3 dimensions of width, height as well as the length. With optical coherence tomography, we get the height or the thickness, but we do not have information on the width of the bundles. Images of individual nerve fiber bundles are not obtained. All this is primarily because of aberrations that occur in ocular optics. The images of the retina that we get are dependent on the optical system of the eye. The optical system of the eye actually acts as the objective lens. The cornea and lens are fraught with aberrations. So just as the view from the patient, from the person is not very clear because of these aberrations, similarly images of the retina that we take from outside are not very clear because of these aberrations. So these optical aberrations can be divided into the low order aberrations and the high order aberrations. Low order aberrations are the defocus and astigmatism, and these constitute 90% of the aberrations, and these have been addressed effectively in imaging instruments like the fundus camera. However, the higher order aberrations like the coma, trefoil and spherical aberrations, these pose a limit to the lateral resolution. High order aberrations are non-stable and need continuous recognition and correction. With adaptive optics by itself does not give imaging. It basically has to be incorporated into an imaging system. These aberrations are measured and then compensated by the imaging systems that incorporate the AVO subsystem. Adaptive optics thus provides images with excellent resolution and sensitivity. They have been so far successfully integrated into 3 primary ophthalmic imaging devices. the conventional fundus camera, the SLO and the SD-OCT. With this, identification of individual cone photoreceptors, the nerve fiber bundles and blood flow is possible. So this would be an image that is normally taken with just the defocus and the astigmatism corrected. If we correct the aberrations, additional aberrations, the higher order aberrations with adaptive optics, this is what we get. And further, if we register and average multiple AO frames, this is the kind of image that's obtained. What we see here in the center in all the images is a blood vessel, a blurred image of the shadowed blood vessel. The background how adaptive optics actually started getting used was that in the use of ground-based telescopes, they were getting poor images because of the turbulence that was there in the Earth's atmosphere. In ophthalmology, adaptive optics was first used in a SLO by Dreher and colleagues almost 2 decades back. Now, what are the components of a AO system? It essentially has a wavefront sensor, which is typically a Hartmann shack, which measures the aberrations. Then there's a deformable mirror, which then has multiple small mirrors in it, which compensates for these aberrations. The interaction between the two is controlled by specialized software. So this is an image, a picture showing the light source reaches the eye, part of the light gets reflected back and hits the deformable mirror. The wavefront sensor recognizes the aberrations and causes changes in this mirror to adjust for these aberrations and gives a modified image. So this is the instrument that we currently have with us. This is the RTX1. This is a standalone camera. So it is not incorporated into a SLO or a OCT, which does have its disadvantages, which I'll talk about later. So if we look at this image on the left, this is the image that we obtain in a normal healthy individual. This we can see are the superior nerve fiber bundles, and we can see the bundles very clearly. The striations are seen very well, whereas this is a patient who has a superior retinal nerve fiber defect. So the contrast, the loss of the nerve fiber layers here is very well seen. With the camera that we have, we only get images like this, so it is extremely difficult for us to actually focus on which part of the retina we're actually looking at. If we were to see the edge of the disc, which is what I'm expecting it to be here, that's the only way we are still able to image. So we are still working on how best we can use it and how well we can incorporate to actually get images of the areas that we are interested in. So the same patient with the superior NFL defect has a superior temporal thinning on the OCT. Now this is an image where I'm just showing it to say that this is the way the edge of the disc is seen. This is the temporal edge. We can see the pores in the lamina cribrosa and the blood vessels. So these are the temporal retinal nerve fiber layers. Now imaging very close to the disc is not a very ideal method, because it's said that very close to the disc the RNFL is very thick and crowded, so we may not get images of individual nerve fiber bundles. Now looking at other studies that have shown that have imaged using AO, we have the ultra high resolution adaptive optics incorporated into OCT system, and this was first reported in 2011, and the first measurements of retinal nerve fiber bundle, a cross section of this was reported in this. This outperformed commercial OCT in terms of the clarity of the microscopic retina. Here they targeted 3 degrees and 6 degrees above, below and nasal to the fovea. Now this is an image where the focus has been on the photoreceptor layer here, and if a focus is on the retinal nerve fiber layer, this is the kind of image that is obtained. So it's important to make sure that you focus the right layer that we want. So this is the advantage when there is a incorporated OCT system or a SLO system, so you can actually see what is the area that you want to image and then get that into the AO, get a cross section, and this is the kind of image that is obtained. So what we see here are the individual nerve fiber bundles. The gap in between is the Muller cell septa. So these are highly reflective as compared to the areas in between, which represent the Muller septa. So we can see as it goes closer to the fovea, there is significant thinning of the nerve fiber bundle. We know about axonal loss thinning the retinal nerve fiber layer, and the measured rate of thinning on the OCT has been less than what has been expected as measured with perimetry. Now, one of the hypotheses for this is that the axonal loss itself triggers a remodeling of the RNFL, which then increases the non-neuronal component. So with this kind of imaging, we could probably separate the neuronal and the non-neuronal components, and thus maybe we can actually measure what's happening to the nerve fiber bundles alone. This is another image of the retinal nerve fiber bundle going right here, across here. If you see these small arrows, that's the nerve fiber bundle, and taking an area of this here where we have part of the nerve fiber bundle defect and little area above and below it of normal, we see that this would be the kind of area that we are looking at, and taking a cross section through this, across this, we see that the nerve fiber bundles here seem to be fairly alright, seem to be okay here, and then there is a significant thinning of the nerve fiber bundle in this area, which corresponds to the area of the NFL defect. If we compare the SDOCT and the UHR, other than lateral resolution, which I've been talking about so far, we also see that even the resolution across the depth of the image also is much better with the AOCT as compared to the SDOCT. We can see the finer definition of the image. The much smaller speckle size makes a striking improvement in the visual clarity of the retina, and this is seen throughout the entire depth of the retina. Now this is another study by Takayama et al., who tried to detect pathologic changes in the retinal nerve fiber bundles in the glaucomatous eyes, and they compared this with the fundus photography, the red-free SLO images, the SDOCT, as well as visual field images. So here what we see is a montage, wide field montage of the AO-SLO images. So if you see, there are actually these small squares here. So these are the individual AO images that have been stitched using a automated stitching algorithm. So again here we see a nerve fiber defect superior temporally and a nerve fiber defect inferior temporally, seen much better on the SLO red-free image. And if we take this area, this red square here, which has a bit of the normal and a part of the retinal nerve fiber layer defect, and then use the AO imaging, we can see the normal nerve fiber bundles that are seen very well here, and the total loss of nerve fiber layer in this area, allowing the bare cone mosaic to be visible. The hyperreflective bundles are the nerve fiber bundles, and the dark lines that we see in between represent the Muller cell septa. Again, a supratemporal RNFL defect seen on these two, and the inferior field defect. Now, when they compared the retinal nerve fiber layer thickness around the disc, this was in a normal. This is the red one is of a normal, and this is of the patient. We see there is a thinning in the supratemporal area. Now, the same nerve fiber bundle width was then taken around the disc, and we see that there is this would be a peak there, and there is a stunting of this in the supratemporal. There is a reduction. So they were able to correlate the nerve fiber thickness as well as the width, and so probably the thickness, along with the thickness, there is a comparable decrease in the width of the nerve fiber bundle also. Now again here we have the nerve fiber bundle defect there, and if you take individual areas involving the defect and not involving the defect, these are the defect corresponding inferior arcuate, and a thinning in the supratemporal and a thinning in the supratemporal, both in the nerve fiber bundle width as well as in the nerve fiber layer thickness. So they suggested that the nerve fiber bundle width changes in proportion to the thickness in eyes with glaucoma. Now this is an area, the A, B and C correspond to the areas A, B and C here. So we have the area of RNFL defect. This area is a little bit of normal and defect and more of the normal. But they did find that even in the areas in the opposite hemifield where apparently there were no field defects or NFL defects, the nerve fiber bundles were thinner as compared to the normal. So they found that nerve fiber bundle width was narrower in the area of NFT, more hyperreflective areas between the NFP in the area of the nerve fiber defect. The width was, even without NFP and field defects compared to normal, it was narrower. Now whether this narrowing precedes the NFL defect that we see on fundus photography is something that we need to see over a period of time. Now AO-SLU revealed nerve fiber bundle remaining in many areas where we saw the defects. So it was actually just thinning and they were not total defects. Comparing it with visual fields, they found that the MD on HVF correlated well with the nerve fiber bundle width. So it may also be objective and quantitative indicator of visual field function. We do have limitations. We get poor images in patients with media opacity. No automated NFP width measurements. We have to use an image J and measure. Cost is a limitation. In our instrument, the measurements are not integrated. There's no fixation turret. It's a small field. The images near the disc show stacks of bundles and there's a slow image acquisition. I'd like to conclude by saying that detecting progressive loss of the nerve fiber of the retinal ganglion cells and the axonal fibers is pertinent to the diagnosis, monitoring, management of glaucoma. Monitoring changes of the RNFL so far has been with OCT. With AO, we have a novel tool here that gives us the cellular details, allows detection, quantification and repeated measurements. With longitudinal studies and more information, it's likely that AO systems play a major role in the early diagnosis and monitoring of glaucoma. Thank you.